The air inside the auction dome tasted like metal and heat. Thick with sweat, spice, and the quiet crackle of neon lights, the place pulsed with a rhythm built on desperation. Bodies moved like smoke aliens of every kind shifting through the narrow aisles, their eyes hungry, their voices low, making offers that sounded more like curses. Beneath the massive glass vaults where the auction block stood, hope flickered and died by the minute, and behind one of those glass walls sat her. She was small, wrapped in what looked like torn fabric from some outdated med clinic. Her skin was a pale violet, bruised in places, her arms trembling as she held them tightly around herself. Her left leg ended at the knee, a jagged stump covered in synthetic gauze, and beside her on the floor was a sign written in shaky common tongue. Sale. Only enough to buy a leg. Not a slave. Just want to walk again, please. Most people didn't stop. Those who did laughed. What would I do with a one-legged freak? A bulky Zarnian merchant scoffed, flicking a coin at the glass for fun. She smells like rot, muttered. A lizard-faced Morvian noble. Besides, she'll die before she's useful. The girl didn't respond. Her gaze was lowered, eyes focused on the metal floor, not blinking. Not crying, just waiting, as if she had already accepted the end somewhere. Near the back of the auction dome, a human man stood still. His clothes were dusty, patched in places. Tall, quiet, and unsmiling, he wore a faded coat with a broken translator hanging around his neck. Most thought he was a scavenger, someone who wandered too far from the inner sectors. Someone who belonged. Nowhere but when his eyes met the glass, he didn't flinch. He stepped forward slowly, ignoring the stares from others. The dome's guards tensed. Humans rarely bought anything at these events. They were considered odd, too sentimental. Not cold enough for the trade. He read the sign again, then he looked at her, not the leg. Not the bruises, but at her. Do you have a name? He asked, his voice flat but not unkind. She looked up for the first time. Her eyes shimmered. Not from beauty, not from hope. Just from the shock of being spoken to. Scylla, she whispered. Her voice cracked like something unused for days. He nodded once. I'm Mason. You. You're not here to buy anyone, she said quietly, almost like a fact. I can tell. He didn't reply. Instead, he turned to the nearest auctioneer drone and said, I'll take her. The dome went quiet, completely silent. Even the blinking advertisement seemed to pause in disbelief. You want that? The drone beeped. She's not even rated for use. Defective. Borderline unsalvageable. I didn't ask for her specs, Mason said, eyes not leaving Silas. What do you want her for, human? Someone shouted from the back. Pet? A pity project? Mason's expression didn't change. She asked for help. No one else listened. The transaction was completed with a few credits, far less than what others spent on exotic slaves or combat drones. No one protested. No one wanted her anyway. As the glass opened with a hiss, Sila's breath caught in her throat. Why? She asked, barely standing. Mason reached out, steadying her. Because sometimes the most broken things are the ones that were built to survive. His hand was warm, steady. Her weight collapsed into his arm, not out of weakness, but because something in her had cracked open. The cold part that believed kindness had died with her leg. As they walked out of the dome, heads turned, not in admiration, not in respect. Just confusion, because no one could understand why a human would choose what the galaxy had already thrown away. But Scylla felt something shift, and deep in the corner of that auction dome, an old watcher stirred eyes. Narrowing as it tracked the human's retreating figure. It remembered that face. It remembered the stories. The small med bay at the edge of Quadrant 7 smelled like rust and recycled air. Overhead lights buzzed with a soft flicker, casting dull shadows against the dented metal walls. It wasn't a hospital. It wasn't even clean. But for Sila, it felt like the first place in years where she hadn't been watched like a thing. She lay on a narrow cot, her thin arms resting on a gray blanket, and stared at the ceiling. The hum of the ship's old systems was constant, almost soothing. Her stump, now cleaned and wrapped with care, no longer throbbed as much, but pain still echoed deep in her nerves. Like memories she couldn't escape, Mason moved quietly around the room, checking a data pad. He didn't speak unless he needed. Too, she had noticed that. Not cold, just ... controlled. Careful ... Finally, he broke the silence. You lost the leg in battle? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked toward the window, where stars crawled by slowly, distant and silent like ghosts. Not battle, she whispered. A collapse. Tunnels on Corvin 6. I was a tech scavenger. Mining shafts gave out during a quake. Mason listened, not interrupting. They rescued the ones who had use, she continued. I wasn't one of them. They said carrying me would slow the team. He didn't respond with pity or shock. Just a quiet nod, as if confirming something he already suspected. I crawled out, she added softly, her voice shaking. 3 days through broken stone and metal. I dragged myself until I passed out near a trade route. When I woke up, I had nothing left but a leg missing and no one willing to help. Mason looked at her carefully, then said, You didn't die. Sila blinked, unsure if it was a compliment or just a fact. Most would have, he added. You didn't. A small lump formed in her throat. Praise didn't feel real anymore. She had heard lies before. Promises made to get her to do something or go somewhere. But this was different. This felt like respect. You're strange, she said suddenly, trying to keep her tone light. Humans don't come to slaver domes, Mason shrugged. Not usually. So why were you there? He paused for a moment, as if weighing the truth against silence, looking for something. He finally said. She tilted her head. You found me instead, he nodded. Maybe that was what I was looking for. The ship shook slightly, a soft jolt passing through the walls. They were in orbit, still docked near a small station neutral ground. A place where no one asked questions, and credits were the only loyalty. Mason stepped to the med drawer, pulled out a small box, and handed it to her. Inside were prosthetic schematics. I ran a scan on your vitals while you slept, he said. Your system's compatible with basic neural interfaces. This isn't top-tier tech, but it'll let you walk again. Sila stared at it. You bought this for me? He didn't smile. He just answered, You wanted to walk. I said I'd help. A deep silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something she hadn't felt in years. Dignity. Someone had listened. Someone had seen her as more. She held the box like it was made of light, but deep inside, fear still twisted around her heart. You know, she said quietly, I've seen people be kind before. It always ends. Mason turned to her. You think I'm kind? He asked, his voice unreadable. Syla hesitated. Aren't you? He walked to the door, paused, and looked back at her. No, he said. I just don't like seeing people treated like trash. Then he walked out, leaving her blinking at the open doorway. Outside, in the control room, Mason pulled up a secure channel and activated a locked message beacon. She's alive, he said into the comm. The girl from Corvin 6, stronger than Intel predicted, and she doesn't know. The voice on the other end replied coldly. If she starts to remember, you know what that means. Mason looked through the window toward the med bay where Sila sat still, holding the prosthetic box in her lap. I know, he whispered, but maybe ... that's what we need. Behind him, a quiet indicator light blinked red. Something was watching them. Something that hadn't forgotten Sila. The hum of the prosthetic leg's first activation was soft, barely louder than a whisper. Scylla sat on the edge of the medcot, eyes locked on the artificial limb as it pulsed with a faint blue glow. The synthetic fibers had been wrapped carefully. Over her stump, connecting through her nervous system like veins of light. It didn't hurt. Not yet. But she knew pain would come. Healing always demanded a price. Mason stood nearby, arms crossed, watching quietly. "I can try now?" she asked. He nodded once. She gripped the edge of the cot, took a slow breath, and placed the new foot on the floor. For a moment, it felt like stepping into someone else's body, unnatural, foreign. But then something shifted. Her brain adjusted. The connection tightened, and she stood, not perfectly, not without a tremble. But she was standing. A sharp breath escaped her lips, not from pain, from disbelief. I'm really standing." Mason didn't say anything, but there was something in his eyes like the quiet pride of a builder watching a broken wall finally rise again. Syl laughed. The sound surprised both of them, but the joy didn't last long. Her laughter was cut off by a flash, her vision blurred. Then something cracked behind her eyes like thunder. She staggered, the new leg nearly giving out. "Scylla?" Mason stepped forward. She gasped and grabbed his arm. "Saw something," she whispered. "A memory, but it wasn't mine. It felt like someone else's pain." Mason's jaw tightened. "Describe." She shook her head slowly. "A room, white walls. Machines everywhere, voices shouting. Someone screaming, but it wasn't me. They were trying to keep her alive. And they failed." A silence fell between them. A heavy silence that pressed against the walls. Mason helped her back onto the cot. "It might be the neural sync. Some old tech can carry memory echoes, especially if the prosthetic wasn't fully cleaned." "Memory echoes?" she repeated. He nodded. "A leftover impression from whoever used it before. But this one's new," she said. "You said." Mason looked away. And that's when she knew he was lying. She didn't push. "Not yet." Later, alone in the quiet of the ship's cargo bay, Scylla moved carefully through the shadows. Walking still hurt, but every step reminded her she wasn't crawling anymore. The cargo bay was dim, filled with old crates and spare parts. A small maintenance drone buzzed in the corner. Ignoring her, she sat down beside a crate, resting her back against it, and pulled up her sleeve. Faint lines had appeared along her arm, glowing, almost like a circuit pattern, but organic. "Alive." She touched one and flinched. Not from pain, but from something deeper. Like her blood was remembering things her mind had forgotten. In the corner of her thoughts, a voice echoed. "Not human. Not hers. They buried us beneath the stone. They swore none would rise. But one did." Her chest tightened. She curled her knees to her chest and held her breath, the fear crawling up her spine like ice. What was happening to her? Why did the leg trigger these visions? And why did she feel like something inside her had just woken up? Meanwhile, Mason sat in the pilot's chair, watching the stars slip by. A file played silently on the screen in front of him. Subject: Scylla Varan. Status: classified origin, deep chamber experiment, Corvain project abilities, unstable, incomplete, dormant directive, monitor, protect, contain. If activated. A slow breath escaped his lips. He had hoped she would never remember, because if she did, they wouldn't just come for her. They would come for everyone, and he wasn't sure he could stop them this time. The next morning came too quiet. Syl stood in the narrow corridor outside the cockpit, watching Mason work silently with the navigation console. Star maps flickered across the screen in soft blues and oranges, outlining a route that curved away from populated trade zones, off-grid, hidden. She hadn't slept much, not after what she'd seen. Not after the strange marks appeared on her arm, marks that now faded like mist in daylight, but still left behind a tingling sensation in her skin, like something under the surface wanted to speak. She stepped closer. "Where are we going?" Mason didn't turn around. "Somewhere safe. You keep saying that," she said. "Safe from what?" He finally looked at her. His face wasn't angry, just tired, burdened, like he was carrying weight too heavy for one person to bear. "From the people who built you," he said quietly. Her breath stopped. "What are you talking about?" Mason motioned to the seat beside him. "Sit. You deserve to know." She sat slowly, heart thudding against her ribs. He tapped a key, and a file opened, a holographic projection of a research report, blurred and redacted in places. Project Corvain. Status: terminated subfile. Sila Varin, test series 4B notes. Partial success. Hybrid activation unstable. Latent energy sequence incomplete. Memory locks enforced. Containment advised. This isn't real," Sila said, her voice trembling. "I was born in a mining colony. I had a mother. A home, you remember." "Those things," Mason said gently, "but they were planted. Corvain was a deep lab buried under that colony. Most people living there didn't even know what was beneath their feet. Your memories were designed to keep you calm if you ever escaped, to make you believe you were normal. Why would they do that to me?" She whispered. Mason leaned back. "You weren't just a child. You were part of something else. A crossbreed experiment, biological integration between two dying alien bloodlines. They wanted to create a survivor, someone who could endure environments others couldn't, someone who could repair, adapt, even regrow." Sila's hands clenched. "But I didn't regrow my leg." "Because it hasn't fully awakened," Mason said. "You've been suppressed your whole life, locked down. The prosthetic synced with your nervous system and triggered a reaction. Now it's unraveling." "Why me?" she asked. "Why? Not one of the others?" He looked away. "Because you were the only one who survived." She stood up, pacing the small room, her mind spinning. "So what now? You take me to some bunker? Hide me forever?" "No," he said. "I'm taking you to someone who might be able to help you control it. A woman named Tessa. She used to work on Corvain before she defected. She's the only reason you're still alive." Sila's voice cracked. "And what if I don't want any of this? What if I just want to be normal?" Mason's reply came slow, heavy. "You don't get to choose what you were made to be, but you can choose what you do with it." She turned away, fists trembling. He let her walk out. In the hallway, Sila leaned against the wall, eyes closed, chest rising and falling like waves in a storm. Everything she thought she was fake. Everything she wanted burning. And yet, deep inside her, something else was rising. A memory. No, not a memory. A presence. She saw a name burned into stone. Ancient letters in a language she didn't know, but her soul recognized. And then she heard the whisper again. They feared the child of fire and void. They buried her in silence. But she was not meant to sleep. She gasped, eyes flying open. "Who are you?" She whispered into the darkness. And in her mind, something responded. You. Outside the ship, far in the distance, a long-range vessel glided through black space, silent, cloaked, watching. On its hull was a symbol, half flame, half spiral, and inside it, a voice rasped over comms. "The hybrid has awakened. Initiate Phase 2. Recover or destroy." Mason's ship continued drifting toward the edges of mapped space. But now, they were being hunted. A red warning light blinked inside the cockpit. Mason was already strapped into the pilot's seat, fingers dancing over the controls as the nav screen filled with pulsing icons. 3 fast-approaching ships, no call signs, no beacons, no questions asked. He muttered under his breath, "They found us." The stars outside twisted as he shifted the ship into evasive maneuvers. Artificial gravity swayed, lights flickered, and the hull groaned under sudden pressure. In the back cabin, Scylla stumbled and caught herself against the wall. Her prosthetic leg adjusted mid-step, compensating for the tilt. The room's intercom crackled. "Scylla," Mason's voice said, sharp and clear, "strap in now. This isn't a drill." She didn't ask questions. Her mind was still heavy from what she'd learned, but instinct was stronger than fear. Within seconds, she was buckled into a seat just as the ship pitched hard to the left. Outside the narrow viewing panel, streaks of plasma lit up the Void Chaser rounds fired too. Close for comfort. "Who are they?" She shouted toward the cockpit. "Retrieval teams," Mason said. "Black Code mercenaries. They work for what's left of Corvin's Shadow Division. If they can't capture you, they'll erase you." "Why now?" she asked. "Why didn't they come for me before?" "Because you were broken," he said flatly, "and now you're not." The ship shuddered violently as another blast clipped the rear thruster shield. Sparks flew across the console. Mason swore under his breath and slammed the panel open, manually rerouting power.syl single quotes, "Sart erased." Her breathing came shallow, but she forced herself to think, "What if I use it?" She said suddenly. Mason turned slightly. "Use what?" "Whatevers. Inside me. What they built me for." He looked at her. "You don't even know how it works." "Maybe not," she said, voice shaking, "but something's waking up. Something old. Something angry." A second explosion rocked the ship. Red lights flared across the main console. They were running out of time. "We won't make it to Tessa," Mason growled. "Not unless we break orbit." "Then let's fight," Scylla said. "Just tell me what to do." Mason hesitated, then tossed her a glowing band. "This will stabilize the link between your limb and your neural cortex," he said. "But it's risky. It'll pull more than you're ready for." She didn't blink. "Do it." She strapped the band onto her arm. The moment it clicked, her body jolted. Her spine straightened. Her vision blurred, then sharpened. Her fingertips tingled, then sparked faintly with light. Mason stared. "That's not just prosthetic sync. That's energy output." "I can feel them," she whispered. "The ships, the pilots. Their anger, their orders. You're sensing them?" "No," she said. "I'm hearing them." For a brief second, her skin shimmered faintly like sunlight across water. Her veins lit up like threads of blue fire. She stepped toward the hull and placed her hand flat against the metal. Outside, the lead enemy ship suddenly veered off course. Its system screamed with false alerts, life support warnings, and gravity surges. The pilot panicked, unable to control the vessel. Then it exploded in silence. Mason's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "I reached inside," Scylla said softly. "I told it to stop." He stared at her. "They'll send more. They'll realize what you can do." "Let them," she whispered. "I'm tired of running." But inside, she wasn't sure. The power felt endless, but also heavy. Each second, it stayed with her. Something else inside seemed to slip further from who she used to be. Was this what they wanted her to become? A weapon? Or something worse? Behind them, the second ship began charging its cannons. Mason spun the ship into a dive, but Scylla was already raising her hand again. This time, she didn't hesitate. And somewhere deep in the void, something answered her call, something ancient. And bound to her blood. A ripple moved through space, invisible to most eyes, but not to the hunters. Their ship systems froze, and then their memories did too. They forgot why they were there. They forgot her. The ship drifted. Aimless. Mason pulled them out of range, breathing hard. "How long can you keep doing that?" Scylla didn't answer, because she had seen something else. In the flash of power, a vision, a stone door carved with a symbol half flame, half spiral, and beyond it, a voice calling her name. The hybrid returns. And the seal will break. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly. We're not just running anymore, she said. Mason nodded, his voice low. No, he said. We're going to finish what they started. The world beneath them wasn't on any official map. A forgotten moon, crusted with black rock and ash, orbiting the burned remains of a dead planet. As Mason's ship landed gently on the uneven surface, clouds of dust swirled like smoke beneath. The landing lights. Everything here felt ancient, untouched, yet Sila's chest tightened with every breath, as if her body remembered something her mind did not. She stepped down the ramp slowly, her prosthetic leg crunching into the gritty soil. The air was thin, cold, but breathable. Mason followed, scanning the perimeter. Are you sure this is where she is? Sila asked. This is where Tessa disappeared, he replied. If she's still alive, she's inside. The landscape around them stretched flat and empty until they reached it. A wall of stone, jagged and towering, carved with symbols that pulsed softly when Sila drew close. They weren't in any known language, but her eyes could read them. Sleeping flame, broken sky, child of both. The door remains. Her hand moved without thinking, tracing a spiral etched deep in the center of the stone. The ground rumbled beneath their feet. A section of the wall sank inward, revealing a narrow passage lit by a dull red glow. Mason's voice dropped. What is this place? Not just a lab, Sila whispered. A vault. They entered slowly. The air inside was warm, thick, alive. The deeper they went, the more the walls shimmered, covered in memories. Holographic projections played on their own, revealing images of scientists in sealed suits, alien creatures strapped to operating tables, data streams rushing like rivers across glass. And then a child. A small girl, violet skin, glowing eyes, missing a leg. Syl, a single quotes as breath caught. That's me, she said. Mason single quotes, jaw clenched. No, it's a clone. The others didn't survive. They failed to stabilize. You were the last. Sila touched the image. The girl inside turned her head, looking right at her. And smiled. The hologram vanished. Deeper still, they found a wide chamber, its center held by a tall crystalline pillar. Suspended inside was a woman, her body thin and motionless, floating in blue light. Tubes ran from her arms into the pillar, keeping her alive. Tessa, Mason whispered. She locked herself in stasis. A panel flickered nearby. Sila stepped toward it and placed her hand on the surface. The crystal reacted immediately, draining the light, lowering the woman gently to the floor. Tessa gasped, coughing as she woke. Her eyes opened, dull, tired, but aware. They helped her sit up. You're her, Tessa said, voice raspy. You're the hybrid. They told me you died. I nearly did, Sila replied, but someone gave me a reason to live. Tessa's eyes fell on Mason. You were her shadow. I protected her, Mason said, even after the project fell. Tessa nodded slowly. They're coming, you know. We've already fought 2 retrieval teams, he said. They'll send worse, Tessa said. They'll send the archivist. What's that? Sila asked. Tessa looked at her with sorrow. Not what? Who? He was the lead designer of the hybrid program. Part machine, part flesh, part mind link. He sees through the minds of those marked. He created the memory locks, and he can break them. A cold shiver ran down Sila's spine. What does he want? You, Tessa said, not to study, not to save, to absorb. Your energy will complete him, and if that happens, the vaults will open. Every sealed project, every banned weapon, Every forgotten horror. Scylla stepped back. Then we destroy. Him. You can't yet, Tessa warned. You haven't fully awakened. If you face him now, he'll pull your memories apart, piece by piece. Then show me how, Scylla said. I'm tired of being hunted. Tessa looked at her long, slow, as if searching her soul. Then she reached for Scylla's hand and placed a glowing stone in her palm. This is the heart core, she said. You're linked to what was sealed inside you. With this, your strength won't just return, it will multiply, but you must choose. Once you activate it, there's no turning back. No pretending to be normal again. Scylla stared down at the stone. It pulsed with warmth, like a heartbeat waiting to match her own. Mason stepped forward. You don't have to do this alone. I was meant to be alone, she said. But that doesn't mean I have to stay that way. And then she closed her hand. The stone dissolved into light. A deep vibration echoed through the vault. The markings on the walls flared brightly, and somewhere across the stars, the archivist opened his eyes. Found her, he whispered. The stars above the dead moon burned red. Mason's ship hovered low over the blackened surface, engines humming softly as the windless air held its breath. Inside the vault, Tessa stood beside the ancient consoles, her fingers dancing over half-lit controls from a forgotten age. Streams of data flowed like rivers through cracked glass. But all Scylla could hear was the silence before the storm. The power she had awakened didn't roar, it whispered. It curled inside her like fire kept in flesh. Her veins shimmered with pale light. The prosthetic leg was now fully fused to her body, part of her, no longer a reminder of weakness, but a symbol of what she had survived. She stood in the center of the chamber, still, eyes closed. Are you ready? Tessa asked. Sylla opened her eyes. He's close. Outside, the darkness shifted. A ripple moved across the surface of the moonlight, gravity itself bending. Then the air tore open, a slit of black and silver, and from it he stepped through. Archivist. Tall, faceless, part machine, part organic mass, cloaked in silence. Where his eyes should have been, streams of code dripped like tears. Behind him hovered 6 constructs, cold, emotionless guards shaped like blades. His voice entered their minds directly, child of flame and void. You've wandered long enough. Come home. Sylla stepped forward. I have no home with you, she said. You are not whole, Scylla, but I can make you whole. Surrender, and you will be more than human, more than alien. You will be eternal. Mason raised his rifle, but Scylla lifted a hand. No. This is my fight. The archivist moved forward. The ground cracked beneath each step. He raised his arm, and the construct surged at her. But Scylla didn't run. She let go. The hardcore pulsed inside her chest. Her body lit with a wave of energy, white-blue fire rushing across her skin, bursting from her fingertips like light breaking through darkness. The symbols on the vault walls responded, glowing like stars waking from sleep. The first construct struck and shattered midair, torn apart by a wave of force. The second never made it close. Sylla blinked, and it dissolved into dust. The others hesitated, but she didn't. She moved like memory and lightning, like a force not bound by rules of blood or tech. Pain didn't slow her anymore. Fear didn't guide her. She wasn't broken. She was becoming what they feared. And the archivist knew it. He lunged, arms splitting into wires, tendrils meant to dig into her mind, to lock her down again. But Scylla caught them mid-air. You sealed me in a fake life, she said, voice shaking with power. You made me forget who I was. We made you useful, he hissed. No, she whispered, ripping his arms away. You made me stronger, he roared. Data screamed around them. The vault shook. Tessa and Mason held onto the walls as everything began to collapse, but Scylla didn't move. She stepped in close, face to face with the being that had hunted her through stars and shadows. "I remember everything now," she said, "and I choose to be free." Her hand pierced through his chest through wires and circuits and code, and she tore the memory lock from his core. His body froze. His voice shattered into static. His form began to break apart, not with an explosion, but with silence. And then he was gone. Just like that. The ground stilled. The vault lights dimmed. And outside, the stars turned gold again. Mason stepped forward, watching her. "It's over?" he asked. "Not yet," she said, looking up at the ceiling. "There are others like me, others they hurt, others still running." Tessa nodded. "You just became their hope." Silas smiled, a soft, small thing. Not out of pride, but out of something she thought she'd lost forever. Purpose. Mason extended a hand. "So what now?" She looked at him, steady. "Now we go back," she said. "Not to hide, to build. For every child they cast aside. For every soul they tried to break. We show them what happens when someone reaches out." They walked back toward the ship, not as a broken girl and a wandering human, but as a fire the galaxy couldn't put out, and from the edges of deep space, a new signal began to spread, carrying a name long buried beneath stone. Asterisk.